So tell me about session 4.
Okay, so this is the session that the carers have been waiting for, because this is the one that they think will tell them how to fix their child, because deep down they still believe that. So what we've done in the first 3 sessions, we've covered a huge amount of material, and probably what the clinical teams would have taken 2 years to learn, they've learned in 3 sessions. So we've given them some psychoeducation about the effect of starvation or chaotic overeating, undereating, binge eating, all of that on the brain. We've given them exercises to develop empathy for the plight of their loved one. We've introduced the animal analogies. We've talked about the cycle of change. We've emphasised the importance of understanding medical risk and also role modelling self-care. We've introduced the language with less is more, ors and dears, and we've introduced this 5-step model for change.
Sorry.
That's all right. That's perfect. No, you perfectly held it there. Sort of 5-step model for change. Well done.
This is a bit.
Thank you.
Shot.
Sorry.
Take a sip.
Gosh, not even giving you a break.
I know. Very good. Okay, we did with that. That was good.
Okay.
Well edited. So see from there, and it's still running. Yep. And you introduced the 5-step model for change.
So in session 4, we continue with the 5-step model for change and the ABC model for behaviour. But this time we're looking at the loved ones, the sufferers' behaviours. So we start off again with a spider diagram, but we put ED in the middle instead of carer. And they find it much more easy to give me the difficult eating disorder behaviours than they did to give me their caring behaviours.
When you say ED, just say
eating disorder. Okay.
So, no, that's okay. But do that from the top.
Okay, so in session 4, we're going to use the same 5-step model that we used in session 3. So it's a good model for change. So we use the ABC model. We start with the spider diagram, and this time we're looking at the eating disorder behaviours. So the carers are very good at giving me lots of examples of eating disorder behaviours, and it might be something, that seems really silly, like eating soup with a fork. So we
So it's very sensitive with the thing. People think it's there. No, that's all right. That's all right.
Shall I start again with the spider diagram?
Yeah, it's easy, isn't it? It's only about a minute of it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and in session 4.
So in session 4, we use the same 5-step model that we've introduced in session 3. And the carers are really keen, because we're starting to look at how they can coach their loved ones to make their own changes. And they understand now, because we've looked at the cycle of change, they understand that they have to be patient and wait until their loved one is ready to be coached. There's no point trying to coach them before they're ready, because it'll send them scuttling back into pre-contemplation. So using the flip chart, I'll say, give me examples of eating disorder behaviours. So I'll put ED in the middle of the flip chart. And it might be something that seems really insignificant, like she'll only eat soup with a fork. So we call that utensil abuse. And there's a bit of a laugh around that. So by this time in the workshops, there's a lot of humour in the room, because we're all in it together, but it's appropriate humour. And then there'll obviously be lots of really difficult things like suicidal ideation maybe, and self-harming behaviours and body image concerns. And I tried to get them to be, I say, yeah, that's great, but be specific. Give me specific examples of behaviours that you think that they might want to challenge. And so we'll come up with all sorts of different things. And then I'll say, right, we need to choose one. So again, we recommend that we choose the easiest one first. So there'll be a discussion around the room. It doesn't really matter which one we choose, but we're just trying to say that if your loved one is going to start to make changes, you want them to be successful, and so start small. So a good example might be a 17-year-old girl has owned up to her parents that she's been suffering from bulimia. So she's binging and purging, and she's in action in that. So she's gone all the way around the cycle of change herself without telling anyone anything, but she's now in action. She wants to stop binging and purging. So how can the parents help her? So we'll do the ABC. So the behaviour is the binging and the purging. So the antecedents to that might be all sorts of things, but it might just be that it's become a habit, or it might be stress, or it might be a difficult circumstance or a bereavement in the family or something like that. And then we'll have the consequences, is that obviously there's medical risk, it's not pleasant for the sufferer, it's really scary for the carers, there's lots of food going missing, the toilet's in a mess, etc., 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 and you've got the vicious cycle. So we want the carers to help the loved one to come up with a plan. So again, we'll look at all the different ways. So the first suggestion might be, we'll just be supportive with her. So we'll sit with her after meals and she won't binge and purge anymore. So we'll help her to eat a regular meal and we'll sit with her and then she won't binge and purge anymore. End of story. You can try that, but not likely to work. So can we break it down? What sort of conversation can you have with your loved one to work out what a good experiment would be? So we might use ORS for that. We might say, let's imagine that the dad is having a conversation with the daughter about what sort of plan we can come up with. And there is an anxiety chart that we use sometimes, which is sort of saying, so what are the things that you're really anxious about? So, not being able to purge after a large meal, what would be your predicted anxiety? 100%. Not being able to purge after a small meal, what would your anxiety be then? It might be 80%. So you can have a scale of all these different things. Sitting after a small meal for 5 minutes, what would the anxiety be then? Maybe 50. So then you can help them to grade, to come up with a plan that's likely to have some success. So then we introduce the concept of SMART planning, so specific, measurable, achievable, realistic within a time frame. So the carer is trying to come up with a conversation to have with the loved one to come up with that SMART plan. So what specifically would you like to be different? What would your experiment be? Well, I think I could aim to sit for 5 minutes after dinner on Saturday with you if we do a crossword together. That's specific. We can measure it. Hopefully it's achievable. It seems realistic. Within a time frame, on Sunday we'll have a chat to see how it went. So maybe it's successful. So step 5 is review and reflect. So maybe it's successful. So on Sunday, using the ORS or DEARS language, the carer and the sufferer can have the conversation. How did that go? How did it feel? And then we have a concept called attend, label, validate, looking at the emotions. So the carer might say to the daughter, I noticed that you were picking the skin off your thumb and that you seemed very anxious. It must have been tough for you. So you validate that I would be anxious if I was trying to make changes, but it might have been a real success. So then you can say, well, I noticed that it was really difficult for you, but you did really well. It was fantastic. So the carers think, oh yeah, I can see how this might work. Then you say, well, what would happen if she only managed to sit for 2 minutes and then ran to the loo and purged? That would be tough. So on Sunday, what sort of conversation would you have with your loved one? So you're really getting the carer to start to think about getting inside their loved one's head. What was going on for their loved one? What happened that day that meant that they couldn't manage the 5 minutes? Was 5 minutes just too big a challenge? Would 1 minute have been better? So we can have all sorts of really useful conversations in the workshops around the challenges for the loved one of making those changes. And that's how the carers can become very good change coaches, by doing these baby steps and empathising with their loved one.
Okay, very good. So that's all session 4.
Does that make sense? Well, the other big thing we do in session 4 is the collaboration with the care team,
Okay, so
which is a biggie.
Yeah, I think that's